Here we go. Recording. Hello, people. Today here, Fanny Anzai interviews. We have Nate from Nate Talks to You YouTube
Hello.
channel with more than 230,000 subscribers. Sorry. Uh, and he loves to do some logic fails. And there are some very popular. And I think the one highlights the most, and we're probably going to spend some time talking about, is Ben Shapiro video.
Oh boy.
The question that actually you kind of answer in the end of the video, and I wrote as soon as I started watching, was like, what, only 5 fails? Because I personally like watching Ben Shapiro. Of course, I have not much in common with his views in general, but I like to pick the other side, to avoid the echo chambers. And I watch him as well, like Clavin, Knowles, uh, and other people that I disagree sometimes with their foundations or their beliefs. Like, of course, they don't base everything into the imaginary religious beliefs, but I see most of the mistakes, and I think what you point out in your videos was a lot of this was like to point out. The principles that or the fallacies that are very intricate in their religious beliefs. So thank you very much for coming. I kind of spent too much time to do your introduction. Could you please just let people know, who are you, how you became an atheist, how you became an activist, and thank you very much for coming.
All right, yeah. So I began my YouTube channel, Nate Talks to You, because I've always, as long as I can remember, been a pretty opinionated person. I've always loved to give my takes on things happening in the media, things happening in my everyday life. So I finally just decided, hey, why not just make a YouTube channel where I can express myself and get feedback from people? So for about a good decade or so, I've been doing that on my channel. And this was also around the same time that I became an atheist. So I believe I became an atheist around maybe '09 to maybe 2010. And the main reason for that was just from finding the atheist community on YouTube. There were a couple of people that I discovered, for example, the Amazing Atheist, Non-Stamp Collector, and they kind of were addressing issues that I found in my religion to begin with. I was raised Christian. And I always kind of pushed a lot of my questions to the back of my head. I just took for granted what people around me were teaching me. But I found that these people were reinforcing my questions and pointing out how absurd the entire thing was. So that's what led me into just officially calling myself an atheist.
How was that transition? Did you have any problem with family or community, or you were not that into the social, like a community, a religious group?
Well, yeah, my mother and father were also both raised Christian, but they're more what you might call a cafeteria Christian, where they pick and choose what parts to follow, what parts to ignore, where like they only focus on the positive parts of the Bible and ignore all the nasty hellfire type stuff. So I know there was a bit of hostility from my mother when I first came out as an atheist, but it wasn't like I was ever at risk of, being banished from the family. So I'm pretty thankful for that. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this country who don't have it that lucky, and I imagine also it's a lot worse, of course, in the Middle East. You don't want to openly be an atheist there.
Definitely true. But interesting enough was when I watched one of your videos with Vincent, or Vincent interviewing you, and then he presented a lot of little pieces of your videos, and then later I came to know you. What is very interesting, because now I'm talking to Vincent and you, that are people that I did not really follow for a long time as the first guest, because now I got such a big audience for me that I did not have before, that comes and brings me people like, oh, talk to these people. And I faced some reality that I think I was a little bit not aware before, that North America, there are so many people declared uh, Christians still. Because I used to point, I was like, oh, in South America, in Brazil, I felt a lot of bigotry when I came out of the closet as an atheist. At work, family, friends, old colleagues from school, from med school, uh, completely avoid me or ignore me or even ban me from groups. And I would think that moving to North America, because that was one of my first reasons to move to Canada, was don't want my daughter to face the same type of experience and bigotry for being an atheist. And it's it kind of happens still here where we are, because we are in British Columbia, where is a Bible Belt in Canada. So there are churches and religious people all around, and even to get a job, they are going to ask you if you're religious. In an interview, in a job interview, they do that and ask you constantly. If you say like I'm an atheist, they are going to go deep on questioning you about how an atheist or activist you would be to face religious rituals and everything. And this is some type of experience that I have had recently. And then face your video saying like, no, there are a lot of uh, uh, declared religious people in the United States. And uh, what is your experience where you are, and what you know about other people that probably give you a lot of feedback on your videos? It's more
Um,
of like there is still like the groups that are religious, or the areas or more concentrated religiously. It's still a lot of problems and socially speaking.
Um, from like speaking personally, like around where I live, I'm thankful that I haven't seen much religious conflict going on. It's like everybody around here gets along pretty well when it comes to religion and such. But of course, if you look online, if you follow news stories, it's quite apparent there's still a religious problem in this country. Thankfully, we're seeing a gradual increase in people who are identifying as non-religious in America, but it's still clearly a minority of people. So, for any atheists out there who say that our work is done, atheism is now an irrelevant topic, they're just wrong.
Yeah, that is something I think I mentioned to with Vincent, that I've read recently, the Everybody's Wrong About God from James Linson, and I love his books. Now reading the Cynical Theories with Helen Pluckrose. And in that book, I just disagree when he talks about the fail of the new atheists. That of course there was a death of the movement with the death of Hitchens, but I don't think the fail, or there is no need for it anymore, since we can. It's not normalized to say that you're an atheist the way that is normalized to say you any religions.
Hmm.
So that is my point of like, no, I think you still need a lot of work in that for sure. And mainly because I think with the movement that came with Jordan Peterson, I would say, and of course there's Ben Shapiro, there is PragerU, there's so much going on the people that what I would call the new the new apologetics, that there are people that use this narrative of we need religiosity for the moral standards. We saw, for example, some people that I used to follow closer, like for example Dave Rubin, that was becoming a libertarian atheist, and then suddenly became back to a religious person because of the utilitarian tool that religion would be to reach moral standards. And I guess we kind of lost the track, because some Harrys and other people that could bring back to more reasonable conversation did not really kept going on the horseman movement, on the no atheist. So what are your takes? And that's why I came to approach you and wanted so much to talk to you. I got some hope watching your videos and seeing that there are a lot of people, reasonable people, that want to debate those guys, these new apologetics, and take the track and lead the movement of secularism, at least. And of course, I ask you if you more of a atheist or anti-theist, because I believe the atheists would push more to read the books and see the inconsistencies of all the religiosities and all the religions than as moral tools that they are really not. Is very arbitrary and very subjective morals that come from different religions, and they do not agree in what is good, what is bad. So yeah, just to listen to your take about it, all this instance.
All right. So as far as the rise of figures like Ben Shapiro, like Jordan Peterson, I see this in part due to a failure of more progressive factions of the atheist movement to engage in good rhetoric and good optics. I think that there are a lot of progressive atheist figures out there who have good ideas, but the way they convey those ideas is very off-putting for people. They engage in language, they use terminology that the average person is not going to comprehend, and it just seems so alien that it's like off-putting again. So I think that was kind of what led to what some might call the anti-SJW movement. We saw like kind of get a rise in popularity around 2014, 2015. And with that, you saw people pushing in a more conservative direction, and this was a big boost to the popularity of figures again like Jordan Peterson, like Ben Shapiro. And with those people being more conservative leaning, they're of course they tend to be more apologetic when it comes to religion. It seems like the atheist debate has shifted to a degree. Originally, it was, is there evidence of God? Is there evidence that Christianity, of Islam, and instead, now the debate is more over it doesn't matter really if it's true or not. It's more just the utility that comes along with it. And uh, I'm not convinced personally. And I can give you two examples of why I don't think that you need to have religion to be a moral, peaceful, happy person. So if you look at countries like New Zealand and the Netherlands, these are two examples of countries that are about 50% non-religious. So you would think that according to this argument that without religion, you're a miserable person, you're more prone to violent behavior. These countries would just be awful. And yet, if you look at the World Happiness Report, these are some of the happiest countries in the world. And also with the Global Peace Index, they are also some of the most peaceful countries in the world. So it just doesn't seem to add up. You would think that following the argument, if it was so horrible to be non-religious, yeah, these countries would be just in oblivion, but they're doing great right now.
Yeah, and I think that was like it's something that you only listen or have heard if you actually follow the new atheist movement when it used to exist, and people were actually becoming the new atheists or the atheists that kind of dropped the guns
Mm-hmm.
and felt like, oh, there's no need to fight anymore. And I never saw as a fight, and I don't see it still, because I think the mistake is to see when people were, instead of talking about the secularism, as a lot of people should be talking about how it's important to be secular in the public sector, is just talking about how we're going to fight Islamization or how we're going to fight these other moral standards or these other religious groups. It's like, no, we actually have to talk about, and that's how the I think I've mentioned to you before we were recording how Ayn Rand have uh, previewed that in her book, saying like there there will be a point where public standards or moral or the public opinion will ask scientists, and is what happened a little bit, I guess, with what happens with people trying to bring back, ask Sam Harris, for example, what is conscience, what's free will, what's moral, and if there is such an objective moral. And actually, I think Sam Harris would be the guy that is the closest one to be able to answer some things like that. Richard Dawkins, to be able to link biology, human body, what we know about our brain, and talk about, of course, there is a lot to talk because there is philosophy, there is determinism, that is a lot of people want to manipulate that concept and say like, oh, there is no free will because determinism. But there is so much more we do understand, and we understand even about uh, evolutionary behavior that explains why we are easily to be good and to be moral not by intuition, but by reason, because we actually have that to over all the other animals that still have the empathy towards the same of them. We see that in animals that don't have the same capacity of
Hmm.
empathizing and rationalizing as we do. And we know that, linking all that, we can reach to an objective moral that is completely, uh, uh, let's say, free from the need of higher standards as imaginary beings or gods or superstitious supernatural beliefs. So I think I felt very much full of hope when I see people that want to use this type of conversation, explore science, what we know, reality, and talk again about what is reality and what is faith, what is truth and what is faith, what is this different perception of reality that so many people want to base their lives, and why that is not the best way to do it. And I've seen that conversation being very well approached at some point in, for example, atheist experience, when Matt Dillahunty was on top of it. And it was not so SJW, let's say, because that was the clash of that movement, that group, because they become start talking about so many other LGBTQ problems and other issues, veganism and other things that start splitting the group. And that is not the important thing. The important thing on the atheist movement is that the only thing we have in common is that we all lack belief in deities. The other things are aside and should not be the main conversation. And also, again, talking about atheist experience, I think sometimes they take the track of being just another podcast that people from the same group will call to be helped, but the people from other group that would be honestly, should be honestly argued using epistemological tools, sometimes are just being mocked. And then a lot of atheists want to distance themselves from this mockery, mocking religious people,
Hmm.
atheism. So they like, oh, I'm not an atheist because I don't behave like that. It's like, behave like what? Oh, like those people that just want to mock religious people, burn Bibles. Like, but that is not what atheism means. Being atheist is just don't believe in deities, and I would even say to push to read the books, because it's the best way for you to see that makes no sense.
Hmm.
So it's a lot. I talk a lot. But what is your opinion? Who are the people you look up to? Who are the people you try to talk or read, and what are your influences?
Um, well, as far as role models, you might say, when it comes to the atheist movement, I would say that Sam Harris was a big role model for me. I used to actively watch Sam Harris's Waking Up podcast. I haven't watched it as frequently as of late, but I do tune in every now and again, and I think that Sam Harris is a pretty good voice. I think that he has some effective ideas when it comes to things like debate and how to win people over. I do like Sam Harris's idea when it comes to things like steel manning, like try to create the best version of an argument, then tear that down. Because if you're straw manning a person's argument, I mean, yeah, you might be able to deceive a couple of people in your inner circle. But if you want to win those people over who are on the other person's side, maybe that person themselves, you have to demonstrate to them why their own ideas are flawed.
That's really good. Yeah. I really like, I've read a lot of them, Sam Harris, and a little bit just bringing back to Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris, because I think both are just two figures that are so much of a meme producers. They produce so much memes. And I think I mentioned before, Richard Dawkins is the
Hmm.
one that create the meme expression, and and the and I think they just links all them together, talking about like how I think all the principles that we talk all the time when we speak against religious in general. It feels a lot of talking about it against Christianity, but you can take any of religious books and then apply epistemology to like, how do I know that? Or listen to any religious claims and try to like how this person knows that and try to make that path, and it doesn't make sense. So I don't know. I think that's why I keep telling people when they come to discuss with me, I was like, oh, you should believe this or that. It's like, look, I have believed in a lot of things, and not for the good reasons. Now I don't believe in any of them for many good reasons. And of course, I'm open myself to believe something if there is evidence. But we need to understand now, and this is the next point where I find a lot of need to talk to religious people that really want to explore their beliefs is what is your evidence and what you would consider evidence. Because one of the things I keep pointing out is like everybody that comes like, oh, because God did that, or angels, or whatever being they believe is the good one to them. It's like, okay, what about the guy across the street that believes it was taken by aliens for a week
Hmm.
and is back with an implant in their brain? What do you think about it? Oh, they are completely crazy. And I was like, yeah, but that is their personal experience. And it should have the same value as yours. And I think sometimes just being, parallel to other people's beliefs and other people's personal experience can also open the eyes to see like, oh, maybe my experience is not that valid, or even sometimes parallel their supernatural being, like, oh, is this made by this being or by other beings? Because I've faced through my life trying to believe something really hard for a long time, because I was told that you cannot not believe anything. You have to
Hmm.
believe something. That is the rule. In Brazil, it's better to believe even Satan, I guess, than to not believe in anything. To be an atheist is the worst thing you can do. It's like there is a popular expression there that's like, if you don't have God in your heart, like you have no morals.
I mean that makes sense. I think that a lot of people they're born and bred into these cultures their entire life. It's really all they know. So when you begin confronting them with ideas like atheism, like secularism, it is so foreign to them that they have their handful of talking points that they'll throw back at you. I find that when it comes to speaking to a person one on one and trying to break them away from their religion, the best thing you can do is engage in a thing called Socratic questioning, or some people might call it street epistemology, where essentially all you're doing is you're asking them a handful of questions, and the questions are designed to make that person engage in introspection. And the hope is that by doing that introspection, they'll begin to self-criticize. They'll criticize their own ideas, and they'll figure out why what they're believing in is illogical, why it doesn't add up. And I've watched a couple of videos on YouTube, and you can just watch these people begin to just lose their confidence over the course of a conversation in their faith.
Yeah, I love to watch like Anthony Magna, Bosco, Reed, Nice Wonder, and so many other people. Dali doing the juggling lessons, Vanilla SE. Uh, and the exploration is not just about religious beliefs. You can actually do that about any political or
Oh
any
yeah, yeah, of
other
course.
conviction you have in your life. I think it's important for ourselves to do that, so we're not gonna die, or we might be dying with a lot of mistakes, of a lot of wrong ideas about a lot of things, but to try to reduce, our misled opinions and beliefs in general. You have to give a little peek, a chance to the other side to listen what they. I'm always curious to know what they know that I don't.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
why I
it's always
listen.
possible you have a blind spot, and it's always good to hear a diverse range of opinions, be they a different opinion when it comes to religion or politics or really whatever. And they may just have a couple of nuggets here and there of valuable information that you didn't factor in before.
I actually have learned a little bit more going through your Twitter. Was
Hmm.
So because I mentioned the thing on the video about the percentage of religious people in North America, and on going on your Twitter, I actually learned something on politics that I heard the press secretary
Oh, really?
talking
What's
so
that?
very negatively about Obama government, and I never, it's like it's a cut that I never seen before. So it's like maybe because I'm biased to only watch one side, you know. So it's like it's good to always face some other different opinions or different takes.
Hmm.
And I love when I actually see the person talking and not someone talking. Like, she said something, you know, because that is so common nowadays to say people said stuff. And in the United States, in I'm I'm so involved, like, or interested in United States politics more than Canadian or Brazilian. It's
Hmm.
funny, but
Well,
I guess it's
America's
because
always a shit
everybody
show. It's like
talk.
a
Yeah.
circus over here, so there's always a lot to witness. It seems like yeah, I really don't know much about the politics of other countries, but it seems like a lot of countries know a lot about us.
You guys are just like, you know, on the focus. Everybody is looking at you. So yeah, it's kind of, um, it's so I thought it was interesting from Ben Shapiro video that there is a lot on the gay sex marriage. I've mentioned about Ben Shapiro before that I actually think I respect him because I see him sometimes just presenting his opinion as his opinion and then not as a public opinion. So I think he's very secular sometimes on understand that his religious or his principles are personal, and then he's like, not that I'm talking for everybody, but I like that you presented so much data and talking about, for example, the and sex, gay sex and gay marriage on that video, and of course you showed me in that video the cut of him presenting his argument was something that
Yeah.
I've never seen that video of his. Uh, so for me, it was like, oh, ew is bad. Actually, his argument is so bad that I was like, I've never seen Shapiro saying that. It was just so bad. Where's that video? You know?
Yeah, that's the thing
So
about Ben. It seems like Ben, I believe
he
he said
produces
on
a
a
lot.
couple of occasions that he doesn't like to make religious arguments in front of people. He'll never say this is good, this is bad because God, or this is good, this is bad because of my holy book. He'll frame things in a secular manner, but it's almost like in his mind, his motivations
But
are
sometimes they
religious.
sleep, and that was my point. Like with him, with Claven, I watched them, and sometimes they like come to talk about. Which I don't record, but there was a video of Claven that is really good, and it's really good. Like the title for me was a little bit of clickbait because it's like I don't know, talking about free speech, and I come and this start. It's his intros are always amazing, and he's really good at speaking. He's a great speaker and was really good until he started with the defense because it was beautiful talk about free speech and everything, but then it was like about God, how God is like how God defends free, and I was like,
Mhm.
wow, that was amazing. But the foundation is all broken because if you don't believe God or if you don't accept God as the creator of everything and the one that gave you the rights, and it's all broken. And of course, it's not a good argument because should be a secular argument to defend free speech, to talk about government, to talk about politics should be always a secular argument.
Well, regarding
So,
that, I'm not sure if I can give you an argument for objective morality. I'm personally skeptical if there even is such thing as objective morality, but this is what I believe. These are my axioms for my moral code. So it's twofold. And I actually covered it in my newest video where I responded to some of Ben Shapiro's fans' negative feedback. So axiom number one is that I strive for less ignorance and more knowledge. The reason for that is because I believe that knowledge is power. I believe that the more knowledge you have, it makes it easier for you to navigate the world around you. Having knowledge allowed us to do things like cure diseases, go to the moon, create computers, and have this conversation right now. But the question is, what should we do with all that knowledge? Like knowledge doesn't really mean anything if you're not doing anything with it. So and that brings me to axiom number two, which is I think that we should strive for less suffering and more happiness. So if you take a step back and look at everything we do, why are you doing it? Why do we do things like listen to music that we like? Why do we play a sport? Why do we strive for higher education? Why do we try to build a family? And that would be because we are trying to find ways to make our lives better. We're trying to find ways to bring about more fulfillment or well-being, whatever you want to call it. Personally, I like to just use the word happiness to describe all of it. So I think that that's a moral code that I think a lot of people could get behind. And I know that you might call that also humanism or utilitarianism, but I'm not sure I want to apply that label to it because I think that, for one thing, when you apply a label, people will make a lot of assumptions about you. And also, a lot of people aren't going to be familiar with those specific philosophical terms. So I just say, yeah, that less ignorance, more knowledge, less suffering, more happiness.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's difficult to sometimes wrap all together for a lot of people to, and it is a complicated, many layers, multi-layered idea of the objective moral. But I think my idea of an objective moral would be like a summarizing or trying to, and not even quoting Ayn Rand, but I think trying to, I always have her in my, I always have her actually, her voice uh, dictating me or dictating when I'm writing my stuff, because I try to write a lot, and when I write about those things, I think of her speaking on her voice. So it's funny. I think the idea is like the objective morals is like every single being can find out by itself that we don't want to be treated in very specific ways, and that should be the rights that we have. So for me, what is the right that the government, the inherent right that we get and the government needs to defend, is the right of your life and your properties. Okay, so for me, the idea of like don't do to others what you would not like to be done to yourself is the summary of objective morals. And that means like, yeah, we all understand that killing, hurting, harming other people and taking their property, and that means crossing or transgressing on their rights of their being and their properties, is a very subtle line that it's easy to be broken. So it's like if everybody can behave in that sense, and that means what would be apply secularism in the public sectors, like yeah, everybody can believe, we can have that multicultural utopia that we all talk about, in the sense that I believe everybody could believe in their gods, in their things, not have any crosses in the mayor station, for example, like, or any public buildings, and not have the president or the mayor using the Bible or any slogan that is religious or anything, like, for example, I would say the Constitution in Brazil, there is a perfect article there. That's the 19th article. That is the amendment. That is the thing that talks about secularism and it summarizes everything. You just keep it in your private. You want to pray inside your house, in your church, in those private places where you're supposed to do your stuff. Yeah, go ahead. On the sidewalk, yeah, sure, pray, unless if you're not stopping anybody. There is such a thing that I don't see many of the people talking about what is the secularism in the idea of like what is the private and what is the public's area. And that is the thing we need to be able to apart in pretty much everything. And then, even when we talk about LGBTQ problems, issues, and politics, it's like, well, maybe the government went too far to give people marriage certificate that should not be even given to to the government that right, or to give it to people. It's not
Well,
a
you
right
mean
that
like
should be
tax
given by the
exemptions?
government, by the state. you know in that sense, you could have like any religious group doing any type of ceremony or nothing at all, and people can do private contracts when talk about marriage
Hmm.
issues. But it doesn't even need to talk about that in the public sector. When it comes to sexual education, I think it's the same thing. If you just don't use that as uh, a responsibility of the state, every family has the right to raise their children and give their sexual education whatever the way they want in their house. And it's not the government responsibility to give that or to have an agenda, because I think it's one of the things you talk about too. It's about the agendas. I think you mentioned a little bit on the video on Ben Shapiro video, the fail. It's
Hmm.
about the agendas, because nowadays there are a lot of different agendas, and that sometimes it's just like not their agendas. We have this the same thing on the left and right on the politics in a lot of these social issues as well, because it's more like it's still left and right, because it's the conservatives versus the progressives or liberals. And and we have the I consider myself centrist. Every time I do my political compass, I'm kind of very center, more going to the right recently. But the point is like, I think if we cannot have these civil conversations and disagreements, as the same way that How to Have Impossible Conversations from James Linson once and Peter Boghossian talks about, we're never going to be able to even change our minds or to contemplate whatever we don't know from other sides,
Hmm.
their other arguments. So I'm always pushing for the conversation, just
Hmm.
for free speech and conversation. But I think it is interesting that the people that have the most activist agenda sometimes are the ones close to criticism. They close themselves to any type of criticism, and they are very echo chambered in their narrative. So they don't even want to listen to, like, hey, maybe there is a data analysis wrong there when we talk about, for example, feminism and wage gap. And we cannot even let have these people to listen to us, and like, maybe there are some problems that still need to be addressed. There is some need for feminism somewhere, someplace, but wage gap is not real. Oh, it will be completely off, and the conversation will be off, and you're gonna be have like deranged people after you for other reasons.
Well, uh, well, that's quite a bit to work with. I'll try to go through as much of that as I can. Well, in terms of agendas, I know that the term agenda tends to have more of a negative connotation to it, but what does the word agenda really mean? It means pretty much a plan, a goal, something that you're striving towards accomplishing. So I don't think that an agenda in and of itself is a negative thing. If an agenda is working to oppress people, to make people in the world more miserable, to dumb people down, I would say that that's a pretty evil agenda. However, if there is an agenda that we can demonstrate would lead to people living happier, more peaceful lives, I would say that is an agenda worth fighting for.
Yeah, but I like that. I think it's interesting. When I heard you saying that, I thought about the video, Stossel video, the Reason TV, when he talks to a lady from Africa,
Hmm.
and she's talking about how the charity and a lot of those non-governmental organizations that send charity to groups, or make those groups in North America to try to help poor people in Africa, how they can be harmful, in their results. Like, oh, we send shoes. In her example, I remember she was talking about a shoe factory that was closed in the area because they received a lot of shoes for free. And it's like, in her argument, her point was fantastic, because she was like, do they think we're so poor that we cannot even have shoemakers? And then they break out whatever we have. So it's like we could be sometimes very convinced that you're doing something good, and
Hmm.
in fact you're not, and that is my, I don't know, I think not that, of course, not all agendas are bad, but even on this sense of like doing something good or believing something, that's my point on the believing something wrong
Hmm.
for the person that is wrong is still good, like the guys that are doing those things, they still believe they are doing something good, and in fact they are doing
Well,
something
yeah.
bad.
That's an example of the evidence showing that you're actually doing a bad thing. That's why I consider myself a consequentialist, not a deontologist, because people who are more deontological may think that the act of charity is in and of itself good. And on paper, that seems to make sense. However, in this situation, that's an example of charity where the consequence of doing it was actually harming the people in that area. So if the consequence of charity in a certain situation would actually better people's lives, then yeah, go by the evidence, keep doing it. But in that situation, then yeah, obviously stop doing that.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. I think that is one of the points I always a little skeptic, even when talk about like what is the reality? Are we just saying things like, for example, like not just bringing up the charity, but are we just saying we're doing good, or are we really doing? When we talk about the charity in the church, I always point out to my brother. He is very religious and from a small evangelical church, and they do even trips to north of Brazil to do charity. But I always point out, say, it's not very addressed to just specific people you can evangelize. Would not be better if you were doing like a charity that is to people that need, you know and when I think of all the religious resources that could be actually driven to so much better if it was something used with logic, with reason, I don't know. I always think about like maybe open a secular humanist church that you're gonna put people not 1 hour a week. So many people sitting there praising something that will do nothing.
Hmm.
Do some charity, do some goods, do actually charity to the community and not to the groups you're going to evangelize. When I became an atheist originally, many years ago, almost 10 years ago, uh, or came out of the closet, I used to pass by so many religious groups, doors, churches, masses in Brazil, and here as well, so many churches every corner. And I keep thinking, like, look, these people could be doing so much better with their time. With this 1 hour at least a week that they put in the church to go there, they could be doing charity and doing other stuff that would be really good to people. So when I think about objective morals, it's just like all these little groups, they know what is good.
Hmm.
But I don't think, and I actually would even challenge that these people that say we need religious, that are the utilitarians, that think that we need for religions for morals, to say like how many people actually have took their morals from the book, that have ever even opened the book and read something that is related to morals.
Hmm.
And I'll guess that's like probably 90% or even more never did. Because even when I was declared religious, and I would say like, oh yeah, the Bible is a great book, and I never opened it. So my morals have not come from there ever. It was always from my parents saying like, don't do to other people what you would not like people to do to you. And that's my point when I keep pointing like, their narrative is wrong, because most of people that are in the church and there are people that are good have not even opened their books and taken their morals, and they're not good because of their books or their groups or their
Hmm.
religious teachings. They are good, of course, is mimetic by the community, and objectively more, the objective moral that I keep talking about is because of course it's good for you to be better to people. What happened when you were bandit? What happens when you steal from people, when you kill people, when when you bad? People will chase you. Police will go after you. You're not gonna get help. Oh yeah, you're gonna be the leader of the mafia or the group in the favela or whatever. In a small group, you can be loved and liked, but you get out of there, you're gonna be killed. That is not the intuitive better to humans. We know that the better is cooperating, helping each other. And that we actually see animals doing, helping each other, just because they are similar. There are many studies in labs that show, like, even like rats with different patterns of colors, if they are not raised together, they will take a little longer to help the other rats that don't look the same.
I actually have seen TED Talk videos. I think like one of the actual researchers behind that was showing a video of how elephants would cooperate with each other and how chimpanzees would as well. So yeah, that is an example of how the idea of morality reaches beyond just human beings, like monkeys and elephants can't read a Bible, they can't read any kind of holy book, and yet they still engage in these, of course, more primitive, but
Yeah.
still, like, it's an example of morality
Yeah, and that
nonetheless.
is explained by just the simple empathy of the similarity inside the species and our normal drive to survive.
Hmm.
Okay, so that is something that, even like you mentioned, comes out of the our capacity, our brain capacity to think. But now we come to be humans that we actually can realize that. So we have more than the intuition. We have the no, we know that is the best way to do. And on top of that, talk about selfishness and charity. It's like, how good do we feel when we are good and we have this someone saying thank you?
Hmm.
That is chemistry, and that is biology. That is also explained by biology. So it's like, that's why I talk about so multi-layered. That's like what people talk about Holy Spirit. No, those are endorphins. We feel good to be good, and that's why
Hmm.
we do it more. And that's how it's easy to be good. It's easier to be good than to be bad. Of course, there is a huge narrative nowadays that's more social, to try to victimize uh, groups and say, like, oh, it's okay if you're bad because you're poor, because you don't have this, because people treat you bad. That is not a excuse and should not be pushed so much the way that has been. That is actually negative.
Well,
uh,
I wouldn't say that being poor necessarily justifies a person to behave in a bad way. I don't think that being poor necessarily justifies, going and committing petty theft, for example. But I would say that being in an impoverished environment makes that kind of behavior more likely, more predictable. I think that if we structure society in a way that makes people that makes situations like that where you end up in poverty less common, people will be less prone to behaving in that kind of manner.
yeah, no, I think what is negative is use that narrative as a justification, because it's easy for us to fall into that when you commit the crime. Not
Hmm.
us in general, but the person that commits the crime to fall into that justification, because in fact, in fact, that is not what we see in reality. When we talk about Black Lives Matter and the criminality, we have much more white poor people. So we would see more criminals in the poor community if that was the truth. If environment and financial situation, if the social economics was the most important factor, we would see more criminals in that sense. So not entering the racial issue, trying to avoid it, but definitely what I have talked to friends is that I don't think we should use the environment as a important factor for morality, because then you're saying, like, it's like I've heard someone saying, like, uh that his parents had a lot of money, and then now that he's poor, he's depressed or bad or feel like more violent or anything more negative. And for me, it was like, I don't think you have changed because of your situation. I don't think I'm like immoral. I'm good and I like people and I love people and I don't steal or kill people. And that if I go to the streets and lose everything tomorrow, I will turn into this person that will think is justified to do that. I think I will try to work and do something else. And even if I'm like close to death, I will still think killing and stealing is wrong and I will not do it. So for me, what I have a problem is like, what about we admit, we recognize, and accept that there are people that they are immoral. There are rich people that are immoral. Maybe if they are put in stress situations, they are going to show what they are really are. But it's not that they changed because they became poor. And that's my point of like, no, I don't think the environment is what changed. The environment can show, can trigger something that always was there, but morality doesn't change.
Well, assuming that is true, assuming that an environment changing just shows who people really are, wouldn't it be better to frame society or make society shaped in a way where people are less prone to behaving in that kind of manner? Maybe they didn't change per se internally, but they're not going to act in that way regardless.
Oh no, that definitely is the ideal, I believe. What we all want is that everybody has the minimum conditions of life,
Hmm.
you know? Now the conversation, a more realistic conversation would be like to is that possible? And until that, you still have something that's much more important that is individual responsibility, you know? And in the sense of like like you mentioned, we are talking about crimes and morals into different communities. We looking at the outside is like, okay, but we have a huge poor community that the data the data itself is a huge evidence against that conversation. It's like if we would now actually entering that, because like there's no way to talk not saying that. Uh,
Hmm.
if we would justify, if we would say that the social economics is the most important thing, because I'm very against to say like that uh, the the racial criminality, no, the racial the unproportional criminality on the racial blacks committing more crimes than any other community is social economics, because it doesn't fit. We would have more people, more whites, because we have more poverty into community, like a bigger community of whites poor the same way. So that breaks that argument.
Well, here's a question for you then. Why do you personally think the black community in America has so many problems?
Oh, it might be the reasons that a lot of people address, like political old old policies that reshape the culture of the community.
So it's the culture.
Mm. It would be like to point one factor only would be the absence of the family structure.
And why is the family structure broken?
Definitely would be like not definitely. A lot of people talk about how would be political,
So political in what way?
that the old policies of taking the fathers out of the houses in the United States.
Taking the fathers out in what way?
Well, they talk about how the old policies would incentivize the families to not have a father. So
Isn't that
in
socioeconomic though?
yeah, pretty much, but that is, I don't know if that is that a justification?
A justification for what?
Is it's not I actually think is more cultural, like maybe that, because like is that because don't have a father, you don't have a authority figure, and then you don't respect authority that well, more than the economics financial problem.
I think it's a
Could be.
multifaceted issue for sure. I think that it's a combination of yeah, I do think that it is important to not have a father per se, but I think that having just one parent is worse than having two parents. I think that ideally, if you have two parents, you're going to have, a better balance of people to take care of you that isn't present in a single parent household, be it just one father or one mother. But I think at the same time, there are socioeconomic issues in this country that even if there wasn't the single parent problem, there'd be other issues to address.
Yeah, I cannot tell, but I think that this exercise, it kind of clarified a bit. It might be more fault of the absence of the father than the economic, than to be poor, because definitely that would explain like why the white families that are poor not committing so much crimes as the black families, and it would justify. I don't know.
I
I
mean,
think it's, yeah.
Um, I'm
Sorry,
sorry
go
to
ahead.
cut you off for a moment, but
No.
I think while poverty is, of course, again, it's a multifaceted issue. I think that poverty is one factor to look at, but it is also important to keep in mind that the experience of white people in America is incredibly different from the experience of black people in this country. I mean,
But
the
the
prime
people
example.
nowadays, you mean?
Um,
Because I listen to Larry Elder and I like him to talk about like I totally disagree with reparations as well, because I think like it would be people paying for me. It's like me paying for crimes of old generations, and I'm very against. I'm very meritocratic in the sense that I don't try to be proud or ashamed of whatever even my parents or older generations has done. So I'm very against the reparations idea in that sense. And what I would like to hear is like these people that keep talking about like racism in America is like, is that talking about what happened like in history, or is like everyday racism experience still? Is like a race is that alive?
well, regardless of the morality question, I'm just talking about the
Hmm.
evidence we have in front of us right now. Black people in this country, the history of black people in America is one of slavery, of Jim Crow laws, of discrimination in general, and some of that still occurs today. I'm not saying that, for example, if you look on the books, we're going to see examples of like a law saying, oppress black people, for example. But there are statistics showing that, for example, uh, there is a discrepancy in how often black people and white people are pulled over by police. And however, that discrepancy disappears at nighttime when the person driving the car is no longer visible. So how would you account for that unless it has to do with looking at a person and seeing a thing like skin color?
That's an interesting data. I never heard of it. But yeah, I'm curious because what I hear mostly is that what accounts the most interaction, what gives the numbers, the results of so many more police uh, with blacks is just the unproportionality of blacks also committing crimes. Like we see the data of like all the groups commit more crimes inside their own groups, but then blacks exceed all the groups inside themselves and outside also. So they are killing more disproportionately more than other groups or committing crime. And then I've might be biased on that sense as well to watch more things that actually show how the accounts of like police brutality on blacks, yeah,
Well,
most
unfortunately,
justified.
I
But
didn't
yeah,
come into this conversation to talk
yeah,
about
sorry.
race and everything.
Yeah,
So,
no,
unfortunately,
totally don't.
if I had data to provide, I would give it right now. But
No, you
after
can
this is
totally
over,
send
if you
me.
want links, I can give you some
I
stuff.
don't have links. Yes, let's do that because we can actually book another conversation. Not necessary to talk about this. I know this is a kind of like can be a difficult issue or a difficult topic for a lot of people to talk about, but I think it's we both trying to learn more about it, so it's
Yeah,
pretty.
and I'd be more than happy to see any links or videos or studies that you have as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I actually don't have anything. I just watch, like I mentioned to you, I watch Larry Elder, Candace Owens, that people that in like I don't really agree much with Candace Owens, but I like to listen to a lot of what they talk about those issues because identity politics. I'm not allowed to talk about
Hmm.
I'm not allowed to
I
talk
think
about
identity
this.
politics is very toxic to discussion. I don't really care about who you are. I care about what your ideas are and if you have evidence for them. I don't care if you're a black, white, Asian person. As long as you can demonstrate that what you're saying is true, that's what matters to me ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, in Brazil, we still have a lot of these problems still. I have tried to talk about the black, the black narrative, the Black Lives Matter narrative in Brazil, that keeps taking all the, they pick and choose examples that just match their narratives, then sometimes don't even match their narratives. And when I try to do that in cases in Brazil, I was just called white supremacist because, I'm not white, but if you defend whites, you're a white supremacist.
That's one thing is that my goal as a YouTuber, as a public figure, is to change people's minds. If a person disagrees with me and I just say you're a racist, you're this, you're that, it's like that's not going to change your mind. I know that in the past people done the same thing to me. They've called me sexist or a bigot. It's like I don't think I am. I don't feel like I am. Maybe there's something. Maybe there's a bias I have
Are
which
you
leans
an
in that direction.
anti-feminist?
But yeah, if you want to change my mind, you can't just start name calling. It's not going to change anybody's opinion.
Yeah, that is a easy old technique to try to discredit people, to call their name. So yeah, I've been called like white supremacist. What was the other? Rapist apologist.
Yeah, rape apologist. That's one that I've heard before.
Yeah. When I talked to David Silverman, that was the name called. They called me like that. But and I am declared, or I should not say that because I never said, kind of an anti-feminist of the third generation, of the third wave, because
Hmm.
I totally think we have reached the some level of equality in between the genders or sexes in Americas, let's say.
Hmm.
Probably not around the world. There are probably needs to go burn some bras in Middle East. So whatever,
Yeah, the White
whenever
Wednesdays, right?
any, whenever any third wave feminists want to do some, activism, I very much support them to go burn some bras over there.
Well,
But
regarding feminism, if we're going by the dictionary definition of feminism, which is supposed to be the theory of political, economic, and social equality of the sexes, then if we're going by that definition, then I'm a feminist. But I do see a lot of people online in marches, whatever, uh, engaging in behavior that I would argue is not living up to that idea of feminism, or in some cases actually going against the idea of feminism. And that's what I try to counter in my videos. I try to point out why the ideas that people are promoting are flawed, why there's no evidence for them, or just why they're destructive. I think that you can bring women up in the world without tearing men down. And I think that some of the policies they push for end up hurting one side and not just bring them to a level playing field.
totally. I think it's interesting because it became, and every day becomes more popular or common to try to make this a type of a sex war. So it's
Hmm.
like man against woman and woman against man, because I think it's something that is growing very well too. Uh, Maybe in response to a third wave feminism is the Meg Towns, the what is the other thing? The no fap
The MRA.
and are they anti-feminist? Like are they?
Uh, MRA is an abbreviation for Men's Rights Activist, and the thing about the men's rights movement is that
Yeah,
there are positives and negatives to it. I think that when there are MRAs who are trying to get rid of things like male circumcision, trying to fight the bias
I'm
towards
totally for it.
women
I'm
in
totally
custody.
for it.
What's that?
I'm
Yeah.
totally for it. I'm totally for against to fight male circumcision as a a everyday procedure to do to kids or for religious purpose. I'm totally with the MRA.
Awesome.
Yeah,
But while those are obviously important things that I think we should address as well as things like male suicide, I do frequent a couple of MRA circles, be them on Twitter, on Facebook, whatnot. And
I would
like
love to
some
talk
of
to
these
them.
people are unironically sexist. do see a lot of really violent rhetoric at times in there. And I wish that the men's rights figureheads would put in more of an effort to try to distance themselves from that stigma, from these kinds of people who are engaging in bad behavior. But from what I've seen, a lot of them aren't really putting in that effort. And I think that could lead to them being ineffective.
Oh, and well, yeah, that is a question. Is that maybe something like turning them into a anti-feminist movement, just like to battle a third wave feminist? Because I
Mhm.
thought the MRA was more like just for men rights activists and was like just talking about the issues that are kind of for we kind of forget to talk or not to give so much importance because everybody's so into this movement, so woman, so feminism is still in in some way that I would say like yeah, I don't think it's that necessary to be talking about women's issues like or what are the women's issues nowadays. If we have some, there is some we need to address. Yeah, probably the some type of a Me Too movement a little bit more reasonable,
Hmm.
to talk about like, yeah, we need to address all the type of domestic violence and not just for women, because I think it became in the last decade something that became almost sexist against men. What I see in Brazil, and I'm talking about my experience as a doctor on the streets with emergency ambulance, I've been in houses of men being beaten by their wives and call the police and yeah have to strap the lady was crazy breaking the house and everything, and it's like it was not the first time that happened. The guy was like running away on the corner and I was like, what's going on, where's the police and why nobody helps? And he's like, oh, this happens all the time, he can't get help because even in Brazil it's ridiculous, but even the law has a female name. It's Lei Maria da Penha. So it's so sexist that is actually they put a female name to the law and they don't protect any man that is domestic that suffers domestic violence. They actually
Hmm.
mock them when they go look for help. So it's a problem that I see that's like yeah, maybe there is a need for MRA. In my opinion or my personal experience, I would be totally up for talking to MRA and try to explore a little bit more if they are just a group anti-feminist or if they are addressing more to their problems,
Well, I
family
think
issues. I've seen some talking about like also family issues when divorcing and stuff like that.
I think like the atheist movement, it's a mixed bag of people, and you have to figure out which ones are engaging in good behavior and which ones are not. But as far as women's issues in America is concerned, I think as far as rights go, I think that women, for the most part, have the exact same rights that men do at this point. I think one battle that has to be fought still is when it comes to our culture. One thing I'm actually wanted to bring up here is there's still a stigma when it comes to women engaging in sex work. I see online a lot of negativity when a woman is on OnlyFans or any kind of sex work website.
I love that
There's a lot of
website.
negativity out there, and also if you're a guy who subscribes to that kind of thing, they have words like simp. These words which are designed to just like socially shame you and bring you down. And I think
That's
that the rise of websites like OnlyFans, like Pornhub, is gradually destigmatizing the idea of that kind of work. And I think that we're just seeing these people trying to push back, but I believe that in the end they'll fall.
Yeah, I think that is a great point. Thank you very much for bringing this up because I think it is something I will might address a little bit more with Sargon next week.
Hmm.
Uh, because there is a lot of this conversation on like young people sexuality or partnership, and the culture is being reshaped. I think we are going through a new revolution because we are in 2020 current year. We feel like we're on top of the world, like at least we are on top of the space timeline. for us,
Mm-hmm.
and we feel like we should be more progressive, we should be more open, we should be more liberal. I think the liberals and progressives feel like that, and I think even the center feels. I'm a centrist, and I feel like that because what I feel is that we should be more secular in our public sector, in the sense of like, don't care about what people do with their private lives. We
Mm-hmm.
still way too regressive nowadays in the social judgment, and definitely for me is that the disconnection of reality and people's mind, in the sense like we all keep talking about, even we hear that narrative a lot of the liberals, like don't care about what people do, and even the conservatives seem to talk a lot about it, that they don't care. You hear Ben Shapiro saying like that he doesn't care about what people do in their private lives. So great. We seem to have reached socially a level of like we could stretch more to be more liberals, in fact. But when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to reality, is what you're saying. I have recently opened an OnlyFans in August 1st. So 2 months OnlyFans. Go check out. It's amazing. This month, October, it's Halloween every night. So yeah, it's being amazing. Everybody loves it. And it's growing really fast, much faster than my YouTube
Oh, congratulations.
channel. Thank you very much. But it is definitely true that we are regressive culturally, socially about sex. We are
Mhm.
not okay with people really doing what they want with their bodies. We're
I,
not
I
libertarians in that sense. That's like, I have had family and even friends telling me I should delete it.
what I found is that at least from my experience, when it comes to people on the left or the right, when it comes to being libertarian, the progressives or the right wing libertarians, they both seem to be for the most part okay with sex work. I see this backlash coming more so from people on the conservative side. And I think that could just be like a historical byproduct of religiosity, which today is mostly coming from the conservative side. And yeah, it's just another reason why I think we need to keep pushing for atheism, because I think that atheism is like the first step towards backing away from those anti-sex perspectives.
Yeah, I actually think I've talked to a friend of mine about this. I think it's a lot of on the no masters. Okay, I think it comes to like the idea of like not having any authority over yourself. And it's like
Hmm.
when you accept that, for example, the objective morals, you have to accept that all your free will, whatever is inside your free will, like even think of the deterministic people that would say like, oh, but your choices are limited into your knowledge, and it's like it definitely is. It's still my free will because it comes from the process of my mind, my
Hmm.
decisions, and my body, my decisions should be respected by other people. Unless I'm harming anybody, then you need to stop me for sure. you know so if I'm not harming anyone or taking anything from other people properties, just let me be. And in that sense, a lot of people say, yeah, I'm fine with that. But even when it comes to, like I mentioned, to OnlyFans, we'll have that social pressure of like, really, you're gonna do that? You're gonna expose yourself? It's like, yeah, I know the goods, the bads, the harms, the I want to call whatever I want to collect from it. I understand you guys are offended, and that's why it's in this little box where only people that can pay and are or not minors. I'll make sure that they're all adults that are consuming, and it's consensual and it's not harming anybody. So what is now? Oh, it's about my feelings. And it's like, yeah, I understand your feelings. That's fine. Don't go check it out. No, I want you to delete. And it's like, no, what about the idea of like, I respect your feelings. You respect mine now. And let me do the thing. Comes, like you said, like, oh, yeah, sure. But then I will call you prostitute. I'll call you names. I will call your fans simps, like you mentioned. So like there is still a huge movement of oppression that is kind of like not it's not invisible. We see all the time. I have noticed and suffered from it a lot with the OnlyFans, but I think we need to stand. And that was like the thing that made me open the OnlyFans first was because I had shared just lingerie, really nice pictures in February, uh, and it was badly received by some friends. And for me, that at first made me back up. I delete the pictures at first or put them in the archive. And then later I thought it was like, no, but I'm fine with breaking taboos. If people are, so it's, it made me think after it. It's like that is a need to talk about it, to normalize this, to break another taboo. It's like, what is the problem? Is the nipple? Because I thought there was something transparent, and some people mentioned, and I was like, okay, so we don't have problems with the male nipple, but now we have problems with the female nipple, so we need to break this taboo. For me, first was just a joke, was a challenge, like, let's talk about another taboo. I have talked about myths on the NoFap movement before when I opened my YouTube channel, and unhappily or happily, I then opened my OnlyFans a year or more later. And now they want to claim that it's like that's why she talks against no fap movement, because she wants everybody to fap for her. But it's again, sure, of course, as many more subs, better for me. But definitely, I even talk to people like, look, if you need no fap movement, if you really have a problem, stay away from my channel. It's not safe.
Well, I mean, I think that masturbation, like any other activity in life, can ultimately become addictive. I mean, caffeine can be addictive, alcohol can be addictive, video games can be addictive.
I love addictions.
It's just, everything in moderation. Obviously, if masturbation is preventing you from having a fulfilling life, it's preventing you
No,
from
just kidding. Let me
doing
just
your
correct
work.
myself. I'm kidding, guys. I'm not addicted to anything.
No
Yeah,
addictions
that's
here.
like, please use with moderation. That's what, listen to Nate, please.
But are you familiar with the philosopher David Hume?
No, sorry, what?
David Hume is a philosopher who had this iconic quote saying that reason is and ought only be the slave of the passions. Essentially, it's a fancy way of saying that our feelings tend to come before our rationality. And I think that's a prime example of what we're witnessing right here when it comes to sex work. A lot of people put a particular feeling that being discussed before all the reasons why sex work isn't really a big deal. And I've actually gathered quite a bit of interesting research when it comes to which group of people are most disgusted. It turns out that if you look at research, conservatives are actually more easily disgusted than liberals are. There's one document I found. It showed that there is a positive correlation between disgust sensitivity and being conservative. Like people are more disgusted, reported more often leaning conservative. So I think we need to find like what it is about people internally or through their environment that leads them to becoming conservative and try to undo that. Because I think that with conservatism comes a higher probability of being disgusted, and that's going to prevent sex work from becoming normalized.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually think what we need is just to talk more to people. I see, for example, recently I have not have much time to answer to comments, but my NoFap video, or the video against the myths on NoFap, every day gets comments. They try to say like, oh, as a doctor you should not be talking against the movement that helps so many people that have problems. Like, my problem with that movement is to tell people they have problems without having a proper diagnosis. So I see a lot of young people that listen to those videos, watch those videos, and have a few normal symptoms of masturbation, and think those are abnormal reactions of overusing masturbation.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, because we kind of overuse when we are young, when you're in those ages, like, so it's like teenagers overusing masturbation is like, is that abnormal? Like, no, that's pretty much normal. And
Yeah, you're
speaking
really
as a
horny at
doctor,
13.
like, and so that for me is like, of course, I've mentioned to some people, even to some, I have never made a video replying to those comments, but into comments that they said like they were masturbating for me. It's just talking 10 minutes about masturbation. I was like, okay, you might have a problem because just
Mm.
masturbating from a girl talking about it, it might need some distance from girls for me.
They're just mad they can't afford the subscription.
but it is more like no, you need to have a proper diagnosis and not just like, oh, I feel sleep after masturbation. It's like that is completely normal. After masturbation or after sex, after orgasm coming from masturbation or sex, you will feel a little sleep. That's totally normal. It's not that you, oh my gosh, I lost zinc on my semen and that's why I have like some low energy or low nutrients and that's why I'm sleeping. That's what they actually make young people believe. And I was like, no, I'm just telling you, you're gonna feel sleep like that after masturbation or any ejaculation. And and I think that is the issue because when you're inside those communities, and that's what I see the most, they are justified by the other one saying like, yeah, I feel the same, yeah, this is true. It's just the same mechanism they use to convince as in the religious groups. You look around, the church is full of people saying the same thing. You feel
Mm-hmm.
justified, you feel right about what you like. Look at so many people. That is one of the things they usually come to bring. And the the biases on collecting data, that is what I pretty much call them pseudoscientific group, because they, oh, look at the amount of people that consume pornography. Sometimes is the argument for them to tell me that there are so many people with problems with pornography. When I
Mm-hmm.
say, but how you consider that everybody that use pornography have the problem, have any problem? So yeah, I'm
Because it's
just,
kind of like the brand new prohibitionist movement. Originally, we're trying to get rid of alcohol, and now we're trying to get rid of the porn.
yeah, and it's interesting because I would love to see more, like more reasonable data on their side on like talking against like if there is some harm, you know and it's like okay, because the harm that we understand that is in over consuming pornography or sex or anything is like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, it's not a new mechanism. It's the same mechanism of addiction that you can actually have even with water you drink,
Mm-hmm.
or food, some people with just normal behaviors. And that is, it's pretty human, natural to happen. So of course, the point that I always try to point to them when they bring their pseudo studies, their pseudo scientific studies, is like, you're not that rat in the lab that keeps pushing the button because he doesn't have a cortical part on his brain that can
Mm-hmm.
actually make sense and think of like, no, I'm not gonna just push the button. You think you should not be driven just by the emotion, just by the intuition, just by the pleasure. That is your feeling, but then you have a brain to work and rationalize against it, and it's like, no, this is being bad to me, I'm not going to do this all day long. Or what I mentioned to, I have had a few for my hate followers I mentioned. And actually I call them like, this is not wrong, because I even had some people coming approaching me on my Instagram saying like, yeah, I hate follow you. Every time I I feel some hate for someone, I come to bad give you bad comments. And I was like, oh, good that you even confessed. I don't know. It's funny. Um, sometimes we have patients that never even had sex ever. So they are
Patience. What do
virgins.
you mean by patience?
Patients, I mean patients because they probably have some type of disease. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
it's not just like the young guy that fell for it. It's like, oh no, I have sex and then and then I masturbate and I feel sleep. No, it's more like this person that never had sex ever, completely virgin, and have tried and not succeed, and now the masturbation exclusively, of course, will be negative after years. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of to address. It's like so many little groups that actually fall into this myth. My point is because like I think it became financially interesting to a lot of charlatans to teach young guys or people with problems how to hardcore no fap. So
I think the rise of the incel movement is kind of like when it comes to the black community problems. It's also a multifaceted issue. So two that
oh,
I can think of right now would be, for one, I think that if women have gained more rights in America, women now have more options when it comes to men. They no longer have to settle for men who are not the most attractive or not the most wealthy. Women are more free to pick who they want. And, unfortunately, while that has given more freedom to women, that's also left a lot of men in the dust. And then they are unhappy with their current lot in life. And then along with that, I think the internet, for all of its positives, for giving us more access to information, bringing people together, it's also made a lot of people spend their time indoors. A lot less people are going out,
and it's being
socializing, meeting
forced to.
friends. Yeah, they're not being forced to, but the internet is another thing that can be pretty addictive, and I think
No, I
that has
mean, like
also led
being
to people.
forced to be inside
Yeah.
recently. It did not help.
Oh yeah, definitely. The lockdown has led. I actually heard that domestic abuse escalated because of the lockdowns occurring. So yeah, human beings were not designed to be
forcing the
indoors all day.
forcing the partners to live together
Uh-huh.
to deal with each other.
So I think that the
Mhm.
internet making people more lonely in some circumstances, as well as women's liberation, giving them more options, are two examples of ways that have led to this rise in the incel movement.
Well, I think it is a little bit what we mentioned before. Maybe we are going through like a revolution of a cultural revolution in the way that also the normalizing not just sex works but other types of relationships, because we are still very into even the government telling you only can get married to one person. In Brazil,
Hmm.
you cannot. I don't know how. In United States, you can you
Uh,
get married to more than one person?
I believe that polygamy is illegal in America. Funny
Mm.
enough, there actually are some states where I think that child marriage is, yeah, in some states, child marriage, I believe, is legal. So that's a bit freaky.
That is fucking ridiculous. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think here in Canada, there are some issues with this. I don't think, yeah, polygamy is legal, but I believe it Justin Trudeau has allowed some child marriage under religious freedom, you know?
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah,
that is pretty concerning. I think that one way we can counter the incel problem we're having is to just bring about more sexual liberation, along with sex work things like OnlyFans and Pornhub. I am in support of prostitution being legalized. I think that having easy access to sex in that manner would help alleviate some of the stress these incels are currently experiencing.
yeah. I think I'm totally for it too. Yeah, we should legalize that. Every time we have like some consensual contract in between two people, I don't think government should ban or should say no to it or stop. I don't even agree with them taking part of the money.
Hmm.
But yeah, I so much less to of them saying that they're going to ban anything. But I just watched something here in Canada. They are talking about banning straws, plastic, some plastic utensils. So unhappily, government is not gonna stop banning things. We need
Hmm.
just smaller governments. That's, I guess, we have like so many people work in the government without nothing to do. They're like, I need to ban something. That's why we need to shrink the government. Probably the libertarianism and smaller governments is a good answer to those things, and in government in more local levels.
Well, I found that personally, when it comes to social issues, I tend to agree a lot with the libertarian movement. When it comes to government, though, I have my disagreements for sure. Um, so when it comes to how big or small the government should be, for me, it depends on like what branch of government we're talking about. I think when it comes to the military, for example, I think that we don't a lot of the money that we have currently in our military could be redirected towards things that would better the American population. Things like education being an example. Um, like I was mentioning before about the World Happiness Report and the Global Peace Index, countries that are currently the most happy and peaceful in the world. You'll notice that these are almost always Nordic countries. And in Nordic countries, they tend to follow a form of capitalism. Some people would call it like discount socialism, called the Nordic model. And these countries tend to have strong social safety nets. So when it comes to things like taxation, they tend to have higher tax rates compared to America. And in spite of that, these countries are doing quite well.
Yeah. Yeah, there isn't a lot to be considered for sure. But mainly on that sense, because I think them themselves don't consider themselves socialists. I've seen some of Stossel, recent TV on that talk about
For which
Sweden and
country?
other places. Sweden, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, like they're not socialists in a sense that like the workers control all the companies, but there is a lot of taxation, to my understanding, in these countries, and the government tends to control more private businesses or just control more businesses than there would
I
be in
think
America.
I think I would guess that what is successful from their model is that the government might not be so corporativist as the way that in America it tends to be. That
Um,
harms like all the levels. I think it harms the individuals that work and the companies as well. And somehow just yeah.
when you say corporatist, what do you mean by that?
When the government gives benefits to big corporations, big companies.
It's possible. I'm not totally sure how benefits would work in
Oh, with
Nordic countries.
subsidies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure how that all works in the Nordic countries. But yeah, if
Oh,
if that's true,
yeah,
that'd
no,
be
I mean
interesting to
I
look
mean
into.
like I think the problem here is that not there. I don't think they do that over there. They don't tell the big corporations that they are going to have profit no matter what,
Hmm.
or like, oh, you can actually not produce so much or produce and not sell, and we're going to just buy you and then burn it all. That's what we are doing, and that might be very artificial for the economy to grow as would be in a free market capitalism that we don't have. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, I do admire how a lot of Nordic countries are running their economies. So if that's one factor that's leading to their prosperity, then I would say for sure, yeah, we should try to emulate that here in America as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it is a fight. I think if we become a little bit more libertarian, and I hope I see that it's starting to get more attention, the libertarian movement in the United States and North America in general. I think that it definitely will be an answer because just as you mentioned, like, oh, I like the libertarian movement. I think it would answer a lot of your expectations in the political level. If you guys elect libertarians, you would see a reduction on the size of the federal government. Mainly if you go like, probably not Joe Jorgensen. She is a good start because she's moderate. But yeah, if you listen to Adam Kokesh, he would like, yeah, dissolve the federal government, leave it in the local level. And, it's definitely like it. Don't spend money with this crappy, for example, like very against the army and spending so much money into outside protection or whatever, or even preparing for whatever war.
Hmm.
Even being an ex-army. Yeah, so I think the libertarian has a great idea of what to do because they would step back on a lot of government power that it's completely unnecessary right now,
Hmm.
that just is costly and yeah, makes the government big and giving too much power that is not necessary, things that government have nothing to do with.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd have to look more into the libertarian movement, like see how much I agree and disagree with, and yeah, if I feel that they're like optimal, that they're the most compatible with my values, then yeah, for sure I'd vote for them. How do you
We're
feel
getting a
about
little sorry,
what,
go ahead.
what's that? Oh, I was gonna say, how do you feel about the current state of the Libertarian Party?
Oh, you mean about the less issues or like United States, you mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Joe Jorgensen a moment ago. You said that you're
Yeah.
not too happy with her, so I'm curious how you feel about the overall state of the Libertarian Party in America.
No, I think they are doing great. I think she's just like the many other candidates they have put before. She's strong, but maybe she's not so. Uh, I think she is totally aware of the principles. I think she's just epistemologically a little bit more left than libertarian.
I did see a while ago. I'm not sure if it was from Jorgensen herself, but there was one Libertarian Party's Twitter account which made some meme post talking about helping the Black community, helping the LGBT community, and it doesn't seem like a lot of Libertarian Party members are totally on board with those concepts. But I guess like the party leaders are trying to bring the party more left.
Yeah, that is definitely like I don't know. I think that is negative for the movement because I would like to really have a. It's like this. What is the problem in the United States right now is because you guys only have two options and it's only left and right. Okay,
Hmm.
so the solution for that would have like a centrist that everybody that doesn't agree with authoritarian measures from left or right would definitely fall into the centrist, and that's why the principles should be strong to keep it in the center. Whenever if libertarians become leftists, okay, you're gonna get the left, but then you're gonna lose the libertarians that were supporting the movement at first. So I think I even talked to Adam Kokesh about this because after our conversation, I have interviewed him, and I think even himself he has lost the track a little bit when he started talking a little bit too much of Jesus and religious principles. And I was
Oh,
like,
is he
what about the
religious?
no masters? What about the no master stuff?
Oh.
you know so yeah, because he is really into like talk about no masters, and I was like, wow. And then now he's used Jesus to talk about Black Lives Matter, and then the Black Lives Matter itself is very leftist. I think it's negative because I think the principle that we need to say that to libertarians is like everybody is the same. There are no identity politics allowed in the libertarian movement just because we're not going to benefit any group more than any other. People are
Mhm.
people. There's no color, there's no sex. So to you know, if you want to really be libertarian in that sense, and we have probably lost the track before with other uh, libertarian candidates, is when they start talking about principles that do not they are not you know in accordance to the principles to the of the party. So it's dangerous. I have talked to Tim Owen, that is Canadian libertarian leader, and we talked about this. I understand that we all, of course, we all Black Lives Matter. We all lives matter because all lives matter are included in the black because the black lives are included in all lives. Okay, but and try to talk about address the problem and even not to fall into the narrative because we know, and at least and I should not say I know, we know. I think a lot of people understand that the narratives on Black Lives Matter, there is a lot of picking choosing and a lot of biases on their narrative inside their agenda. So if we can actually be more reasonable and not be Black Lives Matter, but just stand for all lives, it would be a better libertarian standing, I believe. But
Hmm.
of course, I think it comes to like, well, politicians are people; they have their personal beliefs, and of course that tends to show up when they talk about such a important topic, for sure. Um, I don't know. I would like to see the libertarian get more attention, and I think they are. Last time I saw they were getting a lot of attention. I feel happy for that. Um, they have really amazing candidates. They had really amazing candidates on the line, and Jo Jorgens is pretty good. I like her. No problem. I think she was just unhappy when she was pressed by that, and then I was like, yeah, Black Lives Matter, I'm going to stand for it. Maybe she should back up a little bit and talk more of like everybody the same then.
If you're okay with this, do
Sure.
you think maybe I could shift your opinion a little bit on the Black Lives
Sure.
Matter movement? So I'm not going to like defend any particular
Mhm.
policy from them, but I know that a lot of people like to say all lives matter in response to the phrase Black Lives Matter because some people interpret that phrase to mean that only Black Lives Matter.
No,
But think about it. But
no, I don't think so. I don't think when they say Black Lives Matter, it excludes other lives. I think it's just silly to say, for example, what I think is silly is like this.
mhm.
Should they make a law to protect Black lives? No, because we already have the law that says don't kill. And when I say don't kill, it includes Black lives, and we always have done that. We actually do. For me, it's like there is nothing today that seems to. Oh, yeah, that is the perfect way. There is nothing today that seems to me to be screaming Black lives do not matter.
Mhm.
That would justify to say Black Lives Matter. And that's why I'm not going to use the slogan Black Lives Matter. It's still for me all lives matter, you know. But then they what I think it would prove me the need would say here there are evidence that we are actually killing black people just for being black. Maybe that would be a good way to convince me the need of it. But the problem is, like, I was not convinced by any of their narratives. For me, George Floyd was not killed because he was black. I watched the video several times. For me, it was it was a bad police job, that unhappily end up with his death. And apparently, I have followed a little bit, not very superficially, the post data, and apparently it was not even the guy's fault, his death. So the entire thing that they framed as we need, Black Lives Matter, it is one of the picking and choosing. It's like me taking the Bible, say, like, look at this verse, it's amazing, you should follow this. And it's like, take this case, transform it in a racial crime, and then tell me that I need to support Black Lives Matter. That's, for me, doesn't work. That's the problem, because George Floyd was not a police brutality driven by racism. That's my main issue.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So, yeah, I was under the assumption that, I'm not you,
I'm
of
sorry.
course, but I know there are some people who do take offense to that phrase, Black Lives Matter, because they take it to mean that other lives that aren't black don't matter. And to those people, I would say, how would you feel about Breast Cancer Awareness Month, for example? You're not going to look at that and say, what about other kinds of cancer? It's just a matter
We
of,
should
yeah,
definitely think of that.
yeah, we should look at other
We
kinds,
should
but
no, we should definitely think of, like, okay, how much money are giving to this campaign? Okay, we gave enough money. Can we raise attention to other cancers, please? Because now it became just like, yeah, it's one of those companies, like, it's very rentable.
well, I'm not personally opposed to any other kinds of awareness months being created for other kinds of cancers, but the idea is that we create phrases to bring attention to an issue that is disproportionately affecting one demographic of people. Now, you said that you're not convinced by the arguments of them, but you're saying that if there was evidence given to you to show that black people were disproportionately oppressed, then you would be on board with that phrase, Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because it's like what I've heard the people saying, like, oh no, black people are being more killed by police. And it's like, but when you go to the data, it's
Hmm.
not true. It's like they are having more encounter with police and then being more cute. But that is the reason they
Uh-oh.
came back. But I'm sorry. uh, we're gonna have to finish today, but I would
Okay.
love to talk to you about more things, and then maybe a Zoom meeting to so you can give me more data on the things that I don't know. And
Oh,
uh,
sure, that would be totally
yeah,
fine.
would you be
Uh,
fine with that?
I'd be fine with that.
And maybe talk about other things more, than just we talk about a lot of social cultural issues. uh, and I guess we should do something maybe even more planned on the atheism, you know
I was hoping we could jump into the Jordan Peterson situation, but yeah, obviously I
that's
can see
good.
that you're
Can you
busy right
can you
now, so
do
we
it
can.
next week? or so?
I'll see
Let's
if I'm
arrange. I
available
will stop
next week.
recording and we
Mhm.
do it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can you please just let the audience know how they can check you, follow you, support you, and everything? And
Mhm.
I'll close.
All right then. So yeah, online I go by the name Nate Talks to You. You can find me on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and also if you want to support me financially, you can also find me on Patreon. So those are like the main places where I'm at online. So if you're interested in my stuff, go check me out.
Thank you very much, Nate. And I'll finish here. We keep talking after recording. And
Okay.
thank you guys for coming and check out our next video next week, Sargon. And check out Nate, support us, and see you next video. Bye.
Mommy, I got you credit, Mama.